suppose I could probably use some audio in that. Loading screen. All right, so today we're going to talk about the new player.me create functionality. This was kind of just announced yesterday after a little bit of hinting from an odd source, Split Media Labs. And these people make the streaming software XSplit. And apparently they acquired the gamer social network site player.me. That is exactly as it sounds, player.me in your browser. And they also announced that they would be offering something called Create, which allows streamers to use a web tool to create live stream overlays. Now, I'm sure that there's probably a lot of people like, well, why are you doing a video on creating overlays? Considering that, my viewer count's not exactly stellar. But, I like doing it, and, you just keep at it, and people show up. Great. If not, well, I talk to myself anyway, so I don't see the difference. Point is that it's people maybe like me, or maybe like you, who aren't these mega streamers who have all kinds of resources, and yet we still want to make our stream look, good. Want to make it look as professional as possible because, these things do matter. People come in, and if they don't like what they see, they'll bounce, right? Some people will argue, do you need webcam? Do you need voice? Do you need background music? Do you need all the bells and whistles? Well, that's really up to you as to how much work you want to put into it. But some of the stuff shouldn't be black magic. And that's kind of what player.me and Split Media Labs believe, and they have put into this tool called Create. So rather than stare at my face for the rest of the time and listen to me drone on, let's go. We're going to go take now a look at how to get into Create and exactly what it can do for us. Boom. So, okay, here we go. This is player.me. As you can see, it is actually player.me. Again, it's a social media, it's a social networking site for gamers, kind of. My friends and I actually signed up for this when it launched, mainly to reserve our names, but we've never really felt that we were kind of the demographic that this site was kind of looking to attract, so we never really used it. However, when you come here, if you want to use the Create tools, you do have to sign up for an account. And even if you just want to use the overlay tools, you don't need to participate in all of the social business. So once you create your account here, you can come over to the sidebar, and you can actually find that under the Create beta, it is beta, so some things may be wonky both now and in the future. We have the overlays option. Now, overlays do a lot of different things. They can provide, branding, which is a big reason to do it. They can allow you to do things like, the webcam. And they also allow you to do really cool stuff, like put frames around your entire window or around sections of your window. They will also allow you to do things like tickers. You'll see, the donations, recent followers, things like that. Whenever someone subscribes to a channel, if you offer subscriptions, you'll see something pop up on the screen to kind of announce, because, viewers like to see that kind of back and forth participation. The streamer's on camera, the viewers are kind of, hanging out in the chat, but they like to see their names and lights too. They like to get recognition for being loyal viewers, and that's kind of what overlays help you do. If you just have basically the gameplay screen, maybe that's chill. Maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe you don't like talking on microphone. Maybe you don't like showing your face on the camera. And that's cool. But other people who, like to do stuff, get personal with their viewers, do overlays. So once you click on the overlay here on the side, Normally what you're going to have is just kind of this blank box right over here with a big plus in it. When you hover over this, this gives you some options as to what you can build. There are 3 options for pre-built items that the fine folks at player.me have sent their designer minions to create for you, and you can choose from a wide selection of different themes. There's an in-game overlay, which is what you use when you're actually playing the game. There's an intermission overlay, which is what you use when you gotta go make the bladder gladder. And then there is a start overlay, which is what you would put up while before you start streaming, just to let people know that you're going to be streaming. The notification going to be doing what you're going to be doing. The 4th option is custom, and that's basically starts you off with a blank slate. That's what we're going to be using today, because while all of these pre-mades are very nice, very sexy, and very professionally done, they all do come with a little bit of baggage. You can go ahead and you can modify them if you like, but they come with assumptions that you're going to be using certain features and that you're going to be having certain things in places. So, I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, just to take a look at what we've got. So, if you want to select an in-game pre-made theme, you click on in-game and you basically get this nice list of all kinds of different options for you. Now, some of them are rather more or less kind of game specific, sort of. Some of them are very game specific. A lot of the colors, a lot of the graphical designs and things like that lend themselves better to certain games than to others. Now, some of them, which I did notice, such as this fine one right here. Let's take a look at this one, Graves. So remember, this is for in-game, and this one's pretty cool. So when you are getting around to playing Heroes of the Storm, it's not my kind of game anyway. What you see here is that this graphical business is actually part of the overlay that lays over the game UI. So I thought that was a pretty nice touch. So essentially, it's kind of skinning the game UI using an overlay, which is kind of cool. They also do it over here on the map. And you see over here, we also have something for the webcam, and we also see notifications. So you can actually select one of these, and I believe that they have analogs for in-game, intermission, and the start. So if you choose Fusion Core, you can choose that. So you can actually kind of get rolling with a dedicated theme, which is really good, and that's really important because if you're all over the place, people kind of like wacky. So just to kind of give you an idea, we're going to take a look here at editing the in-game theme, which is a complete theme. We're going to see kind of sort of what we're be trending towards as we build a custom theme. It's going to be nowhere near as good as this, let me tell you. I'm not a Photoshop master. I know enough to get by a little bit, so we'll make do. But you can hopefully do better. But we're going to launch the editor here just by clicking on the little pencil icon. Okay, so now we have a lot of stuff going on here. Now, if you're familiar with something like Photoshop or GIMP or any design tools like that, then you're already probably familiar with the concept of layers. Layers are basically like if you open a drawer to a file cabinet with a bunch of papers or a bunch of folders in there. The folder at the very back is going to be covered up a little bit by a folder that's in the front of it. And that folder is going to be covered up a little bit by the folder that's in front of it. And you're going to keep going until you get to the folder that's in the very front, and that's the one you're going to see the most of. Now, layers essentially allow you to kind of create backgrounds and put elements on top of those backgrounds to get a lot of this nice, sexy layout that we have here. And the layers here are represented over here on the sidebar. Now, this particular layout doesn't have an overall frame. It has individual elements in different locations. So up here we have our social media branding bar, which is represented by this little guy over here. We can go ahead and modify a lot of these social items. Basically, if we want to turn them on, if we had different social networks that we wanted to represent, we can turn them on here and we can set them all. We can also set the, because this is a built-in function, it's using my, my username here, my player.me username automatically, which was kind of cool. And also goes into some of the settings for some of the social networks that I have set up in order to pull it out based on the social icon that I choose. So that's pretty cool. We also have the bottom bar, which is all this business down here. We have our webcam, which is right here. When we actually use this live in our streaming software, it will deal with the webcam automatically on our behalf. So that's a nice little feature that I haven't seen in any other software like this. But the interesting part that we probably want to look at is this guy right here up at the top, which is the alert section. Alerts come in during different activities on your stream, right? So if you get someone who follows you, you'll get an alert that so-and-so followed you. If you get a subscription, they call them, the tips here. You get cheers and things like that. Whenever those things happen, these alerts pop up. And while you're playing the game, you don't see them unless you have another monitor up there with, with a monitor of your stream, but other people viewing the stream, of course, see them. So they're important to give shout outs to people who like to see their name paraded in front of other people. Putting it politely, I suppose. So once you go ahead and you do all your layout business here, then you can actually save it and you can go ahead and launch the test center. Now, when you launch the test center here, what we get is this. This is essentially what your stream is going to look like. Now we're going to move this out of the way. If you've played The Division before, you'll know that this is kind of a pretty good layout. Okay, we're not obscuring anything too much over here. We got the radar, but we don't have a hotbar in this game, so having this down here is okay. There's nothing that pops up over here, so having your webcam is okay. But what you do when you test here, you have an option to simulate all kinds of different activities, like whether you get a follower, a tip, a cheer, or anything like that. So once you've gone ahead and done your design, you want to see if it works or how it will behave, you can actually just click one of these buttons and you'll see that you get this nice graphic with some text over it. And you'll notice it says, in this case, morning mouse just followed. So that's morning mouse is just placeholder text that the system uses. But if it were a real person following you, it would have their name up there. So you can also have the same thing for a tip. It says tip received and how much they tipped. And when the system allows them to leave you a message, it will actually display that message here. So again, we have the nice graphical background, some custom text, and so on and so forth. So when you're done here, you can actually just X out of the bar and it brings you back to the editor. Pretty cool. Now, in order to use these overlays, what you need to do is you need to grab this URL up here at the top. And when you're using either OBS or XSplit, you will add a new source for a new web browser or URL source. And you'll put this in. And then you'll have to adjust it in your particular application in order to get it to work properly. But the good thing about this is that while you can do all of this overlay jazz in OBS or XSplit, you usually end up having to deal with all kinds of layers in the application. And it can get a little unwieldy because each element essentially comes up in its own line. You can turn them on and off on the fly if you've got your streaming app off to the side, which is kind of cool because you have up to the minute access. And if you're using something like this fine fellow right here, the Stream Deck, you can actually have direct access to those scenes in your streaming software, so you can actually, use it like a control board. The downside being is that God help you, if anything happened to your computer and you didn't back up your setting, the most elaborate layout you've created is down the tubes because it was all local, right? What this does is it puts everything in one place, allows you to use a single source through the browser, and it centralizes everything. So even if your computer goes south and you have to rebuild it, this is all here, right? You just reinstall OBS or XSplit, set up your browser source again, copy the URL, and all of this just magically happens. Now, each of these alerts is tied into a service. So in this case, we've set it up to work with Twitch, but because they are a multi-service service, you can actually add multiples. So if you broadcast to multiple locations at once, maybe using something like Restream.io, you can actually set this up to respond to activity from different services, which is very cool, especially when you use something like a chat box. You can actually have it displaying chat from different services. So again, these are professionally made, really nice, really sexy. If you don't have the chops to create graphics, you don't have Photoshop or the GIMP, or you don't have time, or you don't want to buy art from someone or contract somebody to make art, don't steal art, please. Just don't. That's bad juju. You can come in here and use these templates that player.me has made for use. Before we get any further, I suppose the question remains is, are these free? And the answer to that is currently yes. As you can see, it says free and it says owned. No word yet as to how or when or whether or not they actually will be monetizing this particular service. It stands to reason, I guess, that they're going to be charging at least something for some premium overlays. No word as to whether they'll allow community members to create and sell them here, but the fact that they have free on them kind of leads us to believe that at least they may try and sell these. As to whether or not the use of the overlay is going to be free, no idea. So that's kind of the concern that we're not really sure about yet. If you go through all this trouble and make these, are you going to be able to continue to use them for free, kind of without paying, or how much are they going to ask you to pay? So, no further ado, what we can do is go ahead and create a custom overlay. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this, let's see, I don't know, we'll call it standard live. And it asks you to choose a resolution. Now I stream in 920 by 1080, and that is what my XSplit is set to display. So I'm going to leave that as 1920 by 1080. If you stream in 720p or other resolution, you can set it here, and you can also choose a custom. So just make sure, because you definitely don't want to have it come up short when you actually put it into your browser source. Now, of course, talking about this, we're assuming that you're going to be broadcasting from your PC. Now, if you use Twitch or Mixer from PS4 or your Xbox, I don't think that you can use this. There is something that I want to say that does allow you to do that, but I can't remember what it is, and it's, since we're talking about this, it's technically irrelevant. So yes, this is strictly for PC right now. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new custom overlay. So here's standard live. It is an in-game overlay because we chose to create a just flat up custom. If we wanted to do a custom start, we'd click start and choose blank canvas. And technically, there, as far as I know, there's no difference. It says in-game. I'm not sure if how you create your blank space has any effect on the controls you can add. I haven't actually looked into that, and I didn't actually realize what it was doing until right now. So what we need to do now is we need to go to edit. and this is going to allow us to edit our blank theme. All right, so what player.me is thoughtfully done is has given us a background to simulate a game. In this case, I guess this is Counter-Strike. So if we want to change that, we can go over here to our settings. Now, this is going to be our overlay URL. So this is what we're going to put into our streaming software. For our overlay, we can actually choose a live background, which will, when we go to actually use it, we can supply a particular color if we want to use chroma key for background removal. The benefit to that is that if your streaming software supports it, you can do color replacement. But for me, generally, I tend to use PNG files, which allow for transparency, so you can kind of see through. I think that's just easier. I don't know if there's any benefit. Potato PC mode. This is kind of like a low power PC mode. If your PC is older or slower, you can actually put it into potato mode and have it use fewer resources. You can mess with your resolution here, and you can also clear everything and reset it if you're just so disgusted by what you've done. Presets. I'm actually not entirely sure what this is. It says create new preset, so you can actually create a version. Very good. Okay, so once you get everything done, if you want to modify it in a subtle way for a different use, you can go ahead and you can create a different preset, and then you can actually apparently generate a different URL. In this case, default is the one we use. If we created a new preset and called it something else, that the end of the URL, which we see right here, default, would probably be the name of the preset that we gave it. So we can choose what we want to work with. So that's pretty cool. Your editor. So this is where you need to come when you actually come in for the first time and look at this. Now, the advanced mode is something that we found is kind of either let me do the quickest, most basic overlay I could possibly do without having to worry about all kinds of different features. Just kind of give me some of the basics, and I'll deal with that. If you want to have access to additional properties, you turn on the advanced mode. But according to this, it says once you go advanced, there's no going back. I do happen to notice that someone's watching who ran into this problem today, and apparently I theorized incorrect information, because once you have turned on advanced mode, you cannot turn it back off, no matter what. I don't have the option. So once you get yourself into advanced mode, you're stuck with advanced mode. Personally, I think advanced mode is probably the way to go, because you never know what you're missing until you know what you're missing. Snapping is useful because we'll see as we're moving elements around, you'll get these guidelines, and it helps to align elements on the screen with other elements. So if you definitely want to get some kind of a parity with getting things lined up, you definitely want to turn snapping on. Your editor background is this Counter-Strike image. So if you are a big fan of a particular game, you could kind of look at and find something here that you really like and want to use. So tell you what, let's go with let's go with Division. So here's our Division background from our other overlay that we looked at. So we'll be using that. Now, of course, again, you've got, in the case of Diablo 3 here, you'll notice you do have the UI here. So if you were skinning this in order to provide an overlay that works with Diablo 3, you would probably want to choose Diablo 3 so you could actually do your graphics here, and that'd be pretty good. Third-party apps. Now, because Split Media Labs has purchased Player.me, there's some voodoo that they're doing behind the scenes. When you turn on XSplit Broadcaster integration, what it does is it allows you to set your webcam's position here on the web page and have it essentially affect the webcam placement when you're using XSplit itself. Normally, if you're going to throw in your webcam in XSplit, you're going to have to use XSplit to kind of move it around, resize it. If you turn this integration on, then when you throw down a webcam here, the dimensions and the placement will be reflected in your stream. The important thing about that is that when you create a frame for your webcam and you import it here as a layer, you can put your webcam in here direct into the frame. So you can actually kind of get them, play with them in the same environment in order to get them to line up. As opposed to if you were to take this and put just the frame here and use XSplit to control the placement of your webcam, you know, you'd have to futz with it in two different environments in order to get it to line up. Plus then you'd have to move your webcam. You probably couldn't do it actually behind the overlay here. And you just couldn't do it. So this is actually a very beneficial integration if you use XSplit. Now, if you use OBS, you're kind of SOL. You'll have to deal with it in the old-fashioned way by having your webcam set up in OBS and then have a separate overlay for your webcam frame in OBS and not put your webcam frame here in Create. And GameWisp, I don't use GameWisp, so that allows you to do other stuff. And Help, that opens the Help page. Okay, so here we have with a blank canvas. Now, in order to get this, let me just kick over here. Graphics. So in order to create layers, you need to add widgets. And the widgets are what they call basically anything you want to throw on the screen. You might not think of images or text as widgets, but that's what they call them. So in order to create something, you're going to have to add a widget. So the first thing what we're going to do is we are going to look at the sidebar. So service filters. These are different services and the widgets that love them. So if you don't want to include any widgets that focus on player.me, you can uncheck it. If you don't use Mixer, you can uncheck it, or YouTube or GameWisp, you can uncheck it. So what we have left is Twitch. So the only things we'll see down here are things that Twitch supports, or that player.me's overlays support in conjunction with Twitch, using Twitch's API. So because we only use Twitch, we'll be focusing on this. Yeah, the webcam stuff is kind of neat, especially if you use XSplit, and it's kind of necessary if you do want to keep everything in this system. And there are other web-based systems that I have used where they don't have that feature. So if you do want to frame your webcam, you have to deal with it in your streaming app, which is kind of defeats the purpose of putting everything into the website. So the first thing what we're going to do is we'll expand elements and we'll see what we've got here. So we've got text, which puts, as you can see, up in the corner here, it kind of throws down an example as we hover over it. So we got text. We have an image, an icon, which is probably selectable from a different group of icons, like social media icons and things like that. There's video. So if you wanted to play a particular YouTube video, which would be useful on the intermission pages, for example. Web page opens a web page, which in this case is player.me. Progress bar, which can be set to respond to different numeric events. Container, which is strictly an organizational feature for when you're throwing down elements. And we'll definitely be using this because it is extremely important if you want to maintain some level of sanity when building these things. And custom video. Let me just switch over real quick and show you what custom video does. Using the custom video here, I found this Let's All Go to the Lobby MP4 video. And this is going to be my new intermission splash screen. So basically this is coming from player.me and it's using the custom video to display this along with a PNG of the red curtains and some custom text and icons that I threw in there. So that's what you can do kind of with custom video. All right, so elements. Thank you. Alerts. So these are the different alerts that you can use for when someone follows you, someone hosts you, subscribes or resubscribes, gives you a tip or a cheer. So all of these will show up, and they are comprised of 2 different labels, and each label has different content, and you can format each of the labels as you see fit. Now labels are different. Labels stay on the screen, so you can have a follower label. So you can have recent followers, and it shows the last person that followed, the last person that subscribed, person who gave a tip, and the last person that cheered. So those stay on the screen, unlike alerts, which will pop up and they'll go away after a certain amount of time that you can set. Counters, they're numbers. So if you want to, have those, you can do that. Goals. So if you have a goal, you can see we have a combination of a total, a current count, and a progress bar. So they've kind of taken parts from further up the tree here and combined them into essentially a nice visual package. So that's really cool. So I mean, you could probably build these yourself using other elements, but they've gone ahead and done them for you. So that's very nice of them. Trains. Yeah, I mean, however much activity you have in a particular amount of time. I guess people use that. I don't have enough viewers to actually use that. And miscellaneous. These are things that you might use once or twice per layout. You get the chat, so you can actually throw in your service-specific chat if you want to have it on the screen, which I've heard people say, why would you do that? For people who export, I guess, to YouTube, or they want to move their videos around. Embedding the chat in the video keeps kind of sanity for people watching it 6 months down the line. If the streamer says something and nobody knows what they're talking about, they're probably responding to chat, and you can see it there for posterity. Timer. You can set a timer to either count up or count down, which is great for intermissions. And slideshow, I guess, if you want to show a rotating set of pictures, which again would be good for an intermission or a starting soon if you wanted to show slideshows of you doing weird things in game. So that's kind of the rundown of everything that Twitch offers. Now remember that if you do integration with XSplit, you'll see there'll be a folder that I think is called Source down here, and it will have a webcam and a game window option, and those integrate directly with XSplit. And remember, that's only with XSplit. It doesn't do OBS, and I don't know if it will do OBS because they're owned by Split Media Labs. And if you do some of these other services, you may get some additional items under some of these folders. But before we do anything else, we're going to start off with a frame. Now I have a frame that I use currently for my normal stream, which is displayed through XSplit. So we're going to essentially duplicate what I've got going on in XSplit, which isn't terribly complicated, but we're going to duplicate what we got going on over in XSplit here in Player ME. So the first thing we need to do is we need an image. Now the image that I'm going to use is basically not the porg, sorry, is basically just a header here that has my name on it. And what I have done, and you can do this differently, if you upload images, they will go into this bin. So if you upload an image, it'll show up under My Images. Once you start throwing images in here, you'll have them listed here under this overlay. And designs are individual designs that have been made, so you can actually go ahead and scum these elements from things that Player ME design gurus have created, I guess, for use. But I keep all of my stuff up on an Amazon S3 storage space. That way I can access them from wherever, and if my computer goes into the toilet, I won't lose everything. So let me go over into my images and backgrounds, and we are going to find my streaming overlay, and we're going to take the URL from Amazon S3, and we are going to see that when we put it in there and we search, we get a preview. Now, as I mentioned before, I use PNG files, which have an alpha channel, which allows you to essentially create a blank space anywhere you want, so that anything that is behind this image will show through in those blank spots. If this were a JPEG, we wouldn't have that option. It would basically be blank white or black, and that would kind of suck, because it would, anything we wanted to put on top of this or behind it, really, to make it look like it's behind the frame or behind anything that we wanted to overlay, it just wouldn't work. So PNG is a good choice with transparency. So we're going to select this, and we are going to get our frame. Now, you can move it around within reason. It won't go too far because it's stuck to the bounds of what this working space allows. If we go ahead and resize it now, pro tip here, if you're resizing something and you want to maintain the aspect ratio, hold down the shift key when you're dragging, and that will maintain the aspect ratio. Otherwise, if you don't, you're going to get a whole lot of weird stuff going on, and it just kind of really screws with stuff. So definitely hold on to the shift key before you start dragging. I've already screwed it up, but that's okay. Once we get it down to size, we can move it around anywhere within here. Now, you'll notice when we get up near the corners, I don't know if you can see it, but you get like a purple line above the top, along the top and along the left side. That is because we have snapping turned on, and that lets us know that this item is kind of as far in the corners as it's going to go. It's aligned with the top and it's aligned with the left. But we want this to cover up the whole screen. So we can either go ahead and drag this out without shift until we get down to here and then kind of eyeball it, or we can go over here and use the properties panel. So here on the properties panel, once you've got a widget selected, either here on the canvas or here with the purple bar in your widget list, you'll see that you've got properties. So we've got the name of our graphic, and we have advanced and position and sizing. So what we want is position and sizing. Here we'll see that we have a top and a left value of 0 and 0 pixels. That means this spot up over here. When you're snug up in this corner, these values will be 0. And if they're not, like if you're down here and you want it to be snug, you can either drag it up there until the lines turn purple, or you can just simply 0, 0. And because we know we are working with a 1920 by 1080 resolution, we are just going to set those values. So now what we have is our frame in the appropriate location. Now, this viewport is not 1080, is not 1920 by 1080. However, it is scaled down so we can work with it, which is awesome. If we were to kind of change this a little bit, you'll notice that the viewport actually scales so that we retain visibility to everything on the canvas, which is, again, awesome. So just know that even though this is not full screen 1920 by 1080, you still will get 1920 by 1080 at the end of the day. Advanced. Now, if we wanted to really kind of mess with some of this, the image, we can go ahead and we could do that. If we wanted to make it fade a little bit so we could actually see through it, that's kind of cool. If we wanted to change the hue of it, for some elements this works, but for this it does not seem to work. We could also then change the saturation. So what that would do would allow you to kind of like mess with some of the colors. You'd run the spectrum as you're playing with those sliders. So if you wanted to go ahead and do that, you absolutely could. We don't, so we won't. Okay, so now we have our top frame and we have our little bottom frame. Now, the top frame is pretty much it. We want our gameplay basically to show up behind this frame. So when we put this into XSplit, we will have our gameplay first, and then on top of that, we'll have the output from player.me, and that will kind of layer it up so that this, what we're designing here, is kind of layered on top of the gameplay. Normally this would be again, like I said, my overlay is not that complicated, but I do have some elements that I want to add. Now, tell you what we're going to do is we're going to go over here and we're going to turn on XSplit broadcaster integration. Okay, so now we have XSplit broadcaster integration. And when we add widget, we're going to come down here, we're going to see sources, and we're going to see camera source. So here's our camera source. And right now it's just a box. It's not really much of anything. I'm going to quickly jump over into XSplit so I can get my dimension. So I am, in this case, 286 by 255. 286 by 255. And that is a particular ratio that I'm in. It's messed up a little bit so I can get my green screen working, but essentially when my webcam is used, this is the dimensions. These are the dimensions that I use. So I'm going to put this here, which is obviously where I am now, kind of in relation to the rest of the window. Now, the stream you're seeing doesn't have this element down here, mainly because what it's used for, I couldn't get to work in XSplit. So we're going to try and get it to work here. So you can actually right click on any of these elements and you can go ahead and you can rename it. So we're going to say this is going to be, whoops, that's going to stay where it is. And we're going to call this webcam. And this we're going to call screen frame. All right. So webcam doesn't have any other properties aside from the position. But using XSplit integration, once we drop this URL into XSplit, this is where my webcam will show up with these dimensions, which is super convenient. Again, if I wanted to throw another graphic on here to be on top of this frame, I could, which is awesome. All right, so what's going on with the crew? Well, I was going with like a starship theme. So the crew is kind of like, the follower list. So what we want to do is we want to add a widget, and we want to add a label, and we want to add a follower label. So what we see here is it says recent followers and it says player. If we look in the widget section, we have follower label, title, and value. This is a container, which you may have noticed we saw here in elements. The container is the follower label, which contains two text elements, the title and value. When this follower label is selected, I can move both around at the same time. When I can also do this, like resize it. Not like that. I want to resize it, which it is. Then I can go ahead and I can select title. Well, let's select value, and we can actually move it around inside this container. The container is only going to be as small as the widest element in your in the container, but you can actually go ahead and make the container like wider if you want. So you can always go bigger, but if you want to go smaller, you're going to have to resize the contents of the container. Now, in this case, I don't want recent followers, right? So that's title. Now I can either disable it or I can actually trash the whole thing. So now all I've got is player. So what we're going to do is we're going to take player and we're going to put player down here. So what we need to do is we need to tell this, what exactly to select. First up in our properties, we need to select what source we're concerned with. Now we're using Twitch, so we'll select Twitch. The label category is follower. We could do subscriber, tip, cheer, super chat, or sponsor, but we want follower. Type is recent, latest, or none. So the recent, I'm not exactly sure what the time frame is for these. Recent might be like this session. Latest might be like overall, or none is, I don't know why you would use it if you were doing none. The delay, you can kind of set this, I'm not sure what this is. I think this just kind of either fades in or fades out. So we're going to set it to 10. Oh, I'm sorry, that's probably the fading. But we can do an animation in. So we can have it fade in, or let's see, do something. We can have it zoom in. And then time scale, either per stream, so basically follower for the stream. Followers over the course of a day, week, month, or year. So we're going to set yearly. So essentially this should get me the most recent follower in, the course of a year. And it will zoom in when we get a value. So this is at the follower label area, so that kind of controls how this gets updated. And again, we can choose our sizing. Now, in order to format the label itself, we have to click on the value, which is the text portion. So here, this is a token that represents username. So when the follower is detected, it will replace this value here, which currently says player, with the username of the follower. We can change the color, change it to like nice red, but white kind of works, whitish kind of works. We'll just cancel. We can change the size of the font, so let's do 32, nice big font. And we can choose from the fonts that they offer. These are probably specific to player.me, or they come out of the Google font repository, I don't know. Let's see here, I like this one, Sora Patch semi-bold. So what we want to do is want to make sure that we have enough space. There. Okay. And we can extra bold it, or we can align it. Now if we want to mess with the advance, we can choose the opacity, we can do a stroke outline if we want. We can do a glow, which is not really kind of an all-around glow, not really like a drop shadow. And you can actually have it scroll. So if you want, you can actually have it, scroll through a value or something like that, whatever the value is. And then finally, the position and sizing is within the container itself. This is not the absolute position or size on the screen. It is just within the container, which is why it says 0, 0 here. It's actually in the top left corner of the container. All right, so we're going to rename this to be, recent follower. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to save this, save early, save often, and we're going to test just to see what this looks like. All right, so here is our overlay. We have our top banner, we have our the crew, and let's say we get a follower. So Floral Credit is our most recent follower. So when someone comes in and when they actually do the follow, they will be the one that shows up here. One of our concerns was trying to figure out, how we can get the list of like the most recent top 5. And I'm not entirely sure if we could do that. Haven't figured that out yet. So that's kind of, what we do. If you want to add, if you want to leave the label and you want to customize the label, then absolutely you could totally do that. All right, so that's cool. Now, what other thing do we want to do? We want to add an alert because alerts are fun. All right, so we also do want to, okay, so let's do the fun one. We'll do the host alert. So on my current stream, I have a pretty nifty little host alert going with the sci-fi theme, and we're going to try and replicate that here. So just like the follower alert, the host alert is a container with 2 lines of text. In this case, that's not exactly what I want. So extend the container size here. And let's go ahead and mess around with the settings before we leave. We definitely want Twitch, and we want this to last 9 seconds. So the duration of an alert, remember an alert comes in, says its piece, and then it leaves. So the duration is going to stay on the screen for 9 seconds. The delay, I believe, I don't know, I just set that off down to 1, which is about as less of a delay as we possibly can get. Animation in, we're going to have it fade in, and animation out, we're going to have it fade out. And minimum viewers you can set in the case of the host alert for, I believe, however many viewers are viewing the hoster's channel. So it'll carry that number over. So if I have nobody watching me, but Stargrace over here is hosting me and she's got her normal 12 billion viewers, if her 12 billion viewers are on her channel while she's hosting me, I will all of a sudden magically gain 12 billion followers who will probably no doubt leave once my stream is over. So it will carry over the number of viewers from the host's channel, which is pretty cool. And you can also set this to trigger if there's a minimum number of viewers. So if someone's hosting and there's no viewers, it won't trigger. but you know, it's kind of nice to see that. Audio. Audio is when the alert goes off, you can actually set an audio trigger. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go grab an audio trigger. And if I could just remember which it is, I think it's this one. We'll find out in a second. We'll copy it and we'll drop it in here. Now this is an MP3 and it's hosted on Amazon. For an audio track, when you drop it in, you get this neat little audio player. That's exactly the one I want. So you can actually preview it here to make sure that it's correct. So we're going to select that, and you can also set the volume. Now we don't want this to override too much, so we're going to set this down to audio 50%. So it'll be 50. Host name style. So the host is the name of the person. In this case, it says player. So you can actually offset that to a particular color and select. And you can actually have the host animation do its own thing. So we're going to have it pulse. All right, viewer styles. So we're not going to actually concern ourselves with this, so we're not actually going to mess with that. And again, position and sizing is for the overall box here. So we're not going to actually delete second line. We're just going to cut that out. And first line here, we now have the text that's shown. Again, we're using the token, so username is now hosting. And the color is the color of the text minus the color of the player's name, because we set that at the host alert level. So hopefully this should actually show up in a different color. We want, again, the 32 pixel, and we want to get into that. This guy, semi-bold. Okay, so it looks a little more futuristic. For advanced, we don't want to mess with the opacity. We don't want to deal with stroke, glow, and we don't want to scroll it. We're going to tweak the... If you notice when I move this, again, I get that purple line. That's because we have snapping turned on, and it helps align the center of this label with the overall box. So always good to have snapping turned on. All right, so we're going to take player is now hosting. We're going to drag this. Whoop. We're going to drag that down later, because first what we need to do is we need to add a little bit of flair here. So we're going to add another widget. This time we're going to go and add an image. Again, by URL. This actually, being able to do this came to me in the shower. I realized at first, I'm like, oh man, I can't do image alerts. But then it just dawned on me the way it was organized. That yes, you absolutely can do images, and we are going to use a very familiar host image. All right, so this will be our host image. It's kind of massive, and we don't need it that massive. So we're going to hold shift, and we're going to scale that down. Now, it is here above host alert, meaning that they are not associated, but we do want them associated, because if we run this right now, this will be permanent, but this will go away. And if we hit the host test button, this will suddenly show up with the noise, but this image will be hanging over here like an idiot. So what we want to do is drag this guy into the host alert folder until we get a little bit of a purple line, and we just want to let it go. Now you notice our host container actually expands to encompass where this was. We want to just move this up, and we want to move player is now hosting to be down here. And voila, we more or less have exactly what we want. We're gonna put this right there, and we're going to grab it. But we're going to put it right there, more or less. And it doesn't really matter because this is all dead space. It doesn't matter that it's actually extending well beyond, because this is actually... It's actually the center, which is the average of these two, so we actually don't want that. We want this. So, and we want to actually kind of do this. Second line. So this is a good case for why you might actually want to delete second line, because it does tend to blow out the rest of the the rest of the design. So as we are making this smaller, you'll notice that we are actually changing the bounds of the box. Bring that in there. So there we go. Second line, remove that. Player is now hosting. I just realized we actually want to kind of that out a little bit, because if someone with a very long name comes in, we want to be able to size it properly. All right, so let's save it. Now this will be visible here because we want to keep it on. If we turn this off here and we test it and we test the host, nothing will happen because we will have permanently shut this off. You can do that when you come in here and mess with your design. If you want to all of a sudden kind of disable an element for a little bit, you can actually disable it here, save it, and then it won't appear ever on your stream. But we're going to test it out. So here we've got our banner and our crew and our follower, our latest follower, Empty Night. But we want to host, so Greenfire is now hosting. So we've got the red color and we've got the pulse. That's going to last for 9 seconds and then it's going to go away. I also need to center it a little bit more. So there you go. That's an image-based alert. Obviously, the ones that they have in the pre-built templates are a lot nicer than the one that I made. But you know, I mean, I'm a developer, not a designer. So, all right. So for now, we can actually kind of turn that off if we want. But we want one more. This is we want one more alert. So we do want a follower alert. And we're going to just put it right here. And we're going to drag this out. Okay, so we got the thanks for following. We're actually going to take the second line out of this because we definitely don't need that this time. Again, make sure we select our service for Twitch. We're going to set another 9 second with a delay of 1. We're going to have this one. Let's see. Slide in down and then slide out up. So it'll slide down, do its thing, and then slide back up. Our audio. Let's keep our audio. I believe is this one, maybe. We'll find out. Yeah. Again, public domain audio. This one we're going to set down to probably about 30%. Follower name styles. Again, we'll go red. And we will do the pulse. Position and sizing is within the general bounds of the screen, so we're going to deal with that manually. And let's see. So this will be follower alert. Now, first line. In keeping with the science fiction theme, dealing with the crew, we say has joined the fleet. All right, and it's not reflected here until we tab off. We're going to leave color as white. Player will be in red and it will bounce. We're going to set this to 32 pixels and we're going to find our favorite font that I'm sure we just blew by. Yep, there we go. Okay, advanced. We're not going to mess with any of this position or sizing. Again, we do want to put in an image, so I have to now back out and go find my. Add a widget, add an image, and a URL. And there's our little spaceship. All right, so he's a little small, so we're going to shift and drag him out a little bit. So in this case, we want to drop him there and bring him into the folder. Now the benefit, of course, to this, as we saw, is when I've got follower alert, I can actually just move all of them around as we see fit. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to take our image and we want to move our image here, and we are centered in the box. And we definitely want to make sure that we have enough room for the name to expand. So we're going to move this up into the same location where our host image is. Now, both of these are turned on. They're overlapping here. Kind of looks confusing and ugly. But obviously when we run it, test, they're not here. So we've already done host, and we want to do follower. So Curly Rice has joined the fleet. Drops down. Scrolls up when it's done. There we go. And vanishes. And we also have Curly Rice down here as the most recent member of the crew. So, that's kind of more or less what we did. Now, in dealing with alerts, we did have some pre-made folders added for us, but let's say we want to make our own. We can add a container, and we could have this to be like, tell you what, let's rename this, and we'll say, social. And we'll add a widget, and where was that? Page video icon? I don't even know what an icon is. Okay, so if you, oh, well, that's good to know because I imported my own stupid icons, which, give a little flavor, but they have some built in, so you can actually have Steam here. So we're going to rename this to be Steam icon. And we're going to drag this into social. So now in social, we have our Steam icon. And what we also want to do is add some text. And we can actually go down here to text, where it says text element. And we'll just say, because that's who I am. And we'll find our favorite font. And we will call it that. Probably going to need to futz with the Steam icon. Want to bring text in here into the folder, and we'll say Steam Scopeek, so we know if we had different ones, we want to differentiate it between like Twitter Scopeek or YouTube Scopeek or something like that. So if we needed to turn anything on and off, we have quick access to the one that we want. So this one is actually represented in pixels, but we can not do anything, I guess. Let's see, 32. Oh, we can crank it up just by doing that. Position and sizing, so we don't actually have too many options. We got color, so we can kind of sort of make it like, I don't know, we can make it like, I guess we'll make it black just because it shows up better. So now we've got social. So if we had YouTube and Twitter and everything like that, we'd put them in the social, and then we could actually drag them all over the place. Boop, 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 boop. So if I actually get rid of social, and we save this, and we go back to overlay, and we look at our intermission lobby, which we looked at in live, you'll notice here we've got our "We'll be right back." We've got our video in the background. We've got our hokey-looking curtains, but we've got our social down here, which I didn't actually. SOCIAL. So this basically, this area down here contains all of these elements that I can now move around in one large mass, as opposed to having to move each individual element around and just have it be real obnoxious. I do have a timer here, but I'm not going to use it only because I have a timer. I like having the timer actually in XSplit because I can start and stop it using Stream Deck, as opposed to here, it would just kind of kick off, I guess, when the scene becomes active. All right, so we'll just save that. We'll bug out. Now, I don't think that there's any way that I can actually show you how to import this or use this in XSplit without it turning into some kind of a nauseating dimension into another world. I think, let's see, tell you what, let's I think I have OBS. Let's see if we can run OBS and I can show you how to do it here. So we're going to find our standard live and we're going to go ahead and edit. Okay, so what we need is we need a test. Okay. Ta-da! OBS. Okay, so we've got our overlay here in the background with our frame and the crew and our latest follower and our alerts. And we want to add it to OBS. The method is relatively similar for XSplit, but again, there's enough differences between the two that you should familiarize yourself with the entire program and not just this particular process. So what we want to do is we need to copy this URL. We can either just drag it out or we just click the conveniently placed button, and then we can find our OBS. And we want to add a browser source. We want to create a new, and we're going to say player ME live. And we are going to say the URL is this, and the width is 1920 by 1080. And we're going to say FPS 30 because we're not doing anything like that. We'll shut down the source when not visible just to kind of save memory and such, and refresh the browser scene when it becomes active. And bam, we're going to actually let that roll. So we don't have anything else going on here. Actually, because it's live, we actually see, well, hot damn, that works a lot better than I thought it did. Okay, because we are live, we are actually seeing live data coming from Twitch. So what you got here are, this is my crew. These are the latest followers to my channel. So that's pretty hot. If we wanted to now have the screen, let's see, we'll turn this on. So now there's our parallax. But now we have our, everything is behind our banner. That's kind of difficult to see, but everything is behind our banner because our player.me live layer is ahead of our AOC, which is my monitor. So we've got the nice layering going on. And if we wanted to have anything else turned on, we could totally do that. Like I got a 5-minute timer here, which is probably behind something, so we can't really see it. But essentially, that's kind of the long and short of working with the player.me create tool. So again, it's really super convenient for people who either don't have the time or the skills or the money to buy the software, or to contract somebody to do some artwork for them. Don't steal artwork. And you can come in and use either one of the pre-built themes, or if you do have some artwork that is yours and that you are licensed to use, you can go ahead and throw it together here in really really quickly, and you can actually make it look really good. And you have access to a lot of the cool wizardry that a lot of the popular streamers have for things like follower count and alerts and things like that. Now you may notice, of course, that some streamers have things like what's playing on Spotify. That's obviously not here. They don't have that here. If you want to use that kind of functionality, you'll either have to find a service. You could use something like XSplit with its plugins, or you could use something like Twitch with its new extension system, or you could use something more advanced like Streamlabs. A lot of these things, you can search around and find integrations. So if you want to go, full Grand Wizard, oh Jesus, I'm sorry. If you want to go, full bore, you're probably going to still need to use something other than just this service. But this is a really good way to get yourself started. So again, if you go ahead and do this, if you want to friend me here on Player ME, I'm Scopeak everywhere, on Twitch, on Twitter, on Steam, and here on Player ME. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'm not exactly sure how long this went, probably well over an hour. But I will definitely put this up on YouTube as well as creating a highlight on Twitch for posterity. So let me provide you now with a non-Player ME outro, and thanks for watching. Just like you to know that is not my outro.